Rotary Club of Windsor St. Clair. And we are here today to learn a little bit more about native plants, pollinators, and other garden-related tidbits. So before we begin, I just want to do a very brief land acknowledgement. One thing too is, if you don't mind, everyone, just to mute yourselves, just so we can keep the background sounds down a little bit. That would be very much appreciated. The Rotary Club of Windsor St. Clair meets on the territory of the Three Fires Confederacy of the First Nations, consisting of the Ojibwa, the Odawa, and the Potawatomi. There are few places on earth where others have not walked before us or called it home. We pay our respects to the original ancestors of this place and reaffirm our relationship with one another. Okay, so just a few housekeeping things. We are being recorded for those of you who have tuned in a couple minutes later. And if I ask if you could mute yourself, that would be fantastic. We do have a chat and a Q&A, and if you want to chat and tell us where you're from, etc., in the chat line, that would be wonderful. If you can put your questions in the Q&A, then us moderators can find them more readily and we can feed them to our speakers. So that would be great. We are going to be doing a draw at the very end for one of 4 weeby houses, and I just happen to have one here with me, so I can show you. And our creator, Joseph, was on board a minute ago. He might be on the other screen. So that's the weeby house. Okay. This is one of the larger ones, and it comes out. Then you can clean it readily. Okay, so that's one of 4 that will be up for grabs at the end. All right. We'll be contacting the winners by the emails that you have registered with. Okay, so if you have to leave a couple minutes early or whatever, we can still get in touch with you. Joseph, I know you're here. There you are. So Joseph has created these weeby houses. If you don't mind, Joseph, just putting your contact information in the chat line if anybody wants to contact you for another weeby house or 2, that would be wonderful. All right. Each of the speakers will have a presentation, and then there's going to be a Q&A to follow each of the speakers. So make sure that if you have questions regarding a particular speaker, make sure you get the question into the Q&A before we go on to the next, okay? Because then that speaker may move on and may not be available to answer your questions, okay? All right, we're going to have 3 moderators with us today, Monique, Mary Ellen, and Bill, and I'm going to call on Monique to start us off with some things Rotary. Thanks, Monique.
Good afternoon, everyone. Thanks, Deb, for that introduction to our first ever Eventbrite activity. So I'm just going to give you a quick rundown on what Rotary is, just so that you know who we are and why we do the things that we do. So Rotary is a global network of 1.4 million neighbors, friends, leaders, and problem solvers who see a world where people unite and take action to create lasting changes across the globe, in our communities, and in ourselves. So Rotary members believe that we have a shared responsibility to take action in our world's most persistent issues. You can Google Rotary International for more information, a little bit about our club. So we're Rotary, the Rotary Club of Windsor St. Clair, and we belong to the Rotary District 6400 as an international Rotary district. We have over 50 clubs, being both in Michigan and over here in the Windsor Essex area. So quite a large district. And so it's very interesting to work together with that whole group of people. Our club is a hybrid club, which means that we meet at 7:15 a.m. every Thursday in person and also on Zoom. We currently have 31 members. And we're always looking for new contacts, new joiners. So if you're at all interested, please get in touch with any of us that are from the Rotary, or just Google Rotary Club of Windsor St. Clair, and we'd be more than happy to speak with you and see if you'd like to join up with us. Rotary has 7 avenues of service, and the 7th being the environment. So Rotary, our club, has always been heavily involved in the environment and doing service in our area. So just a highlight of a couple of things that our club has done. The Ganacho Trail, the Rotary Club of Windsor St. Clair in 1977 took on a challenge that would change the landscape of our city and Essex County forever. Presented with the facts, our club jumped in and voted 100% to support that project. It was a very proud moment in our club's history, and it offers Windsorites the opportunity to walk, jog, rollerblade, cycle, a winding asphalt pathway that encourages regular exercise. So that was a big part of our club. Shanfield Shores, a partnership with the Parks Department of the City of Windsor since 1977 to improve the Ganacho Trail. It includes an east-west trail that parallels Riverside Drive East and a north-south trail beginning just west of Sandpoint Beach. And the pavilion, the totem pole on the waterfront at Sandpoint Beach, these have also expanded to include Pesh Island and the associated lands in 1999. We also have a boundary-free playground project at Lacoste Park that was put together in 2003, and it was designed so that all children, regardless of their level of physical or sensory development, could play together in the spirit of friendship and understanding. Let's see. Oh, yes, and now we also have done a lot of tree planting at the Lakeview Park. One of our big projects in the recent years was we pledged $150,000 to build on the grounds of the Regional Children's Center a 20 by 40 foot structure as a greenhouse. And it provides a therapeutic environment for special events, plant and vegetable growing, and other project opportunities for youth for the various programs that go on there. Earth Day cleanup. We often clean up the trails and waterways in and around Windsor St. Clair. This is an ongoing project. And our upcoming project is Operation Pollination, which our host Deb will speak about after our first speaker. So you can see that the Rotary Club of Windsor St. Clair is heavily involved in making our environment a healthy and happy place to be. So again, if you have any questions, please don't hesitate to look us up. Google Rotary Windsor St. Clair, or yes, Windsor St. Clair Rotary. And we'd be more than happy to get in touch with you. Leave us a note in the chat, whatever. So our first speaker is Gina Panunzio. Gina is currently the Partnership and Outreach Coordinator with the Essex Region Conservation Authority and the Remedial Action Plan Assistant with the Detroit River Canadian Cleanup. She works with both IRCA and DRCC's partners, volunteers, organizations, businesses, and individuals on a number of stewardship and citizen science initiatives. She completed a Master's of Science in Environmental Practice along with an Environmental Studies degree with honors from the University of Windsor, the Postgraduate Environmental Management and Assessment Program at Niagara College, and holds a Sustainability Education Certificate from Algonquin College. So without further ado, Gina, I'm going to let you take over.
All right, there's been a little trouble with Gina getting on board, so we're just going to change the order of things. So what I'm going to do is I was saving the Operation Pollination bit for after Gina was finished, but we'll put that will give her a couple of extra minutes to get herself set up. So I am going to, and the other thing is it doesn't look like we have a Q&A section on the bottom of our screen here. So if you want to go ahead and put any questions that you have directly into the chat, and the moderators, we will monitor that and attempt to get the questions to the speakers as efficiently as we can. There's always got to be some little glitch, so this just keeps us on our toes on a Sunday afternoon. So let me share my screen. If I can do that, make sure I get the right one. There we go. All right, Can everybody see that? Just excellent, good. Okay, all right. Let me just shrink this guy down a little so I can see better. Okay. So Operation Pollination came about actually in 2018. And it started with 3 national heritage areas in the US. And I'm going to scroll back here. And it is, they started with 3 national heritage areas getting together to see what they could do about saving our pollinators. Rotary came on board in 2021. And since then, we've had a huge surge of people interested in saving our pollinators. We are actually supported by the United Nations. The General Assembly declared that 2021 to 2030 it is to be the decade of ecosystem restoration, with the #1 aim to prevent, halt, and preserve and reverse the degradation of ecosystems on every continent and in every ocean. They feel that it will only succeed if everyone plays a part. And how can we, as small groups and individuals, hope to make such a difference? And that's where Operation Pollination comes into play. So Rotary has come on board and it's part of the solution. And what we are hoping to do is get our community partners organized. It's an inclusive framework. There's no cost to join this initiative. But what we're trying to do is, as Rotary clubs in this district, we want to reach out and connect with diverse groups to get them to help us with pollinator habitat restoration. And that might be, as one of our operators had jokingly said, throwing appropriate pollinator seeds out of the car window as you drive by. I think we want to be probably a little bit more organized than that, but it may be simply making people aware of what plants would be more user-friendly to pollinators, and perhaps trying to get neighborhoods connecting up one garden to another, which will give pollinators a pathway to move from one area to another. Without pollinators, this is what you would see. So much of our food is pollination is required. Some countries have gone to human pollination, where they're going out with what looks like feather dusters to pollinate the plants. I even saw a picture recently in a presentation of a drone pollinator, and it looks much like a bee, and that they would use to help pollinate the plants. So we want to, if we can, obviously use our natural pollinators, and they may be beetles or flies. Bats are also pollinators. So anything that we can do to help them to do their job. So we're looking for partners in the community. I have reached out to a couple of people already, but we're looking for people that would be willing to come on board and just pledge to help us with our pollinator, Operation Pollinator. And that could mean small municipal gardens. That could be your own backyard. If you don't have a backyard to speak of, container gardens, window boxes. We might look at, we are talking with a local cemetery to perhaps plant pollinator trees, or plants at the edges of the periphery of the cemetery garden area. They've even done solar farms. They've put pollinator plants in the location of the solar panels. So there's many things that we can do, small and large, to help Operation Pollination complete a task of increasing our pollinators. Now, I do have time to open up to questions. I'm going to stop sharing. I'm going to come back. And if there's any questions regarding the initiative, how you get involved, any of those questions, just let me know. And hopefully Gina has gotten herself set up.
It's Beneteau Dave, BENETEAU DAVE.
All right. Anybody questions? If you want to, you can put them in the chat, or you can raise a little reaction, and I will try to find you. I have two screens that I'm looking at. anything along that way. Okay. All right, let me see if I can locate Sheena.
So while we're waiting, oh, is someone else added to the chat? Send this information out to me at there. I'm gonna look right now, see if I can find that pledge, the email link to that, and I'll try and post that in the chat. So if you're looking for that information, I'm gonna post some of it in the chat there as soon as I can get it up and put it in there.
Okay. Now, one of the things that we are planning to do is once this webinar is over, and I see, Burke, you have a question on 2 seconds. We'll be posting the video and the information on our Rotary website. So that's Windsor St. Clair Rotary, and that information will be there as well. We're hoping to be able to send out the links to the presentations today and the pledge forms through the emails that you registered with. Again, once the webinar is completed, so that hopefully that will give you some of the information that you need. And Burke, I'm thinking that you have a question, if you'd like to go ahead with that.
Thank you. I was just wondering if for larger organizations or schools, I was wondering if there was any information on how schools would get involved with something like this, or what kind of activities and things like that may contribute to this pledge.
And that's a really good question. We will, what I'm asking people to do at the moment is contact us through the club, because we are part of Operation Pollination. And then what we want to do is speak to the schools directly. We've got a couple of teachers here on board, and they've got some projects that they're looking at to do with the school. So there's lots of opportunities. One of our moderators was just telling us of a little project that she's looking at, hoping to get involved with, and that is putting some wee bee houses or bee houses, solitary bee houses on their school property. And so again, that would, the way to attract solitary bees is to make sure that the house is near where your garden is going to be, because solitary bees don't travel the same distance as you might see a honeybee travel. So, oh yeah, there's so many opportunities. So if you contact us directly, that's what we're here for. We've got a committee now, our environmental committee, that will be looking at all kinds of different projects, large and small. And we'd love to have schools on board, actually. That would be fantastic, because what better audience than young people, you know, so great. Yeah. Thank you.
Deb, Mark,
Deb,
yes.
you have a few questions. Sorry, there are a few questions on the chat.
Okay, thank you.
Mark Kuchar had one. Would Rotary support a school pollinators garden?
Oh yeah, yeah. We haven't figured out the whys and wherefores, but what we want to do is get into a dialogue with the different groups, large or small, in terms of how to do that. You know, what kind of size of garden you have, you know, resources and that type of thing. So yeah, that's a conversation that we'd love to have, because a pollinator garden is relatively easy to get set up. It's just a matter of getting people committed to doing that, determining how you want to take care of it, that type of thing. And one of our speakers, Brandy Bayshard, is going to be speaking about setting up a pollinator garden. So she would be in a fantastic position to answer those questions.
Somebody once said to me, Deborah, I'm Bill for everybody who doesn't know me. I've just got the club's Zoom link. But somebody once said to me, if you don't ask, the answer is always no. So feel free to ask us to help, and we will do what we can. Yeah,
yeah. Because this is a relatively new initiative to Rotary International and to our Rotary Club. We've just signed on board as you know, ambassadors to this initiative. So we're learning as we go. So we have lots, you know, we want those suggestions. We want those ideas coming in from schools and publics and municipal gardens and that type of thing, because then we can spread the word. Any other questions? Okay, let me just see if Gina has come on board. Jan, it looks like you have a question. You'll have to unmute.
Okay,
there you
that's
go.
what I'm just looking for. Hi, everybody. I'm the president of the Horticultural Society in LaSalle, also a Rotarian
Nice.
with LaSalle. And we are obviously very involved in doing pollinator gardens. And I have two that are upcoming. one in Vince Marcotte Park in LaSalle, and one at a different private location out by River Canard. And I have grants from the OHA, Ontario Horticulture Association, for both of those. And also in regards to pollinators, we're very much interested in doing pollinating gardens. And obviously we're right now doing a workshop on monarchs, how to raising monarchs from egg to butterfly, which is always, we're incorporating that into our pollinator gardens. So we'll be having a workshop on May 29th here in LaSalle. And there's a bit of registration and all the things included, speakers and door prizes, lunch, etc. So that will be on our Facebook page, and LaSalle Ambassador Horticulture Society. You could follow it there. And I'll also post any details to you, Deborah, if you want, in regards to that workshop, so people can actually raise pollinators from these pollinator gardens where they will be collecting eggs from the monarchs.
Absolutely.
If you're interested. If you're interested.
Yeah, no, that's, it sounds like you guys are very active out there in
yeah.
LaSalle. That's terrific. It's great to hear.
Okay, thank you.
By the way, for anybody who's a Zoom novice, if you go to the bottom right of your screen, not the far right where it says "and," but there are reactions. And if you click on there, one of the options is to raise your hand, like so. So and I see Mary Alice has raised her hand. So that's how it's done. Oh, Gina Panunzio is having trouble accessing us, so we'll see if we can track her down in the meantime.
Can I go ahead and ask my question? It's Mary
You can
Alice.
go ahead and ask your question.
Great. I live in Tecumseh, and there's a roundabout with a large Rotary symbol in it at the end of Manning and Riverside Drive. And every year they plant bedding plants there. And I just wondered if this year, and I don't know if Rotary sponsors that garden, if we can plant native plants there. I live in Tecumseh. I'm a butterfly way ranger. I believe in native gardening, and I just wondered if there was any there to plant some natives there this year.
My understanding is that we did originally, but the town has taken it over since then. So okay. I think probably the town, your town councilor, or the town councilor for the area would be the best one to talk to. And
okay.
And also, if you go through the park, Lakewood Park, there are trees planted there for our 40th anniversary. So that's put in another plug there.
Okay. There's a section of the park that has native plants in it as well.
Yep.
And I don't know if the town manages that. I'm going to contact them about that.
I've seen people working on it, and I think my wife and daughter helped there at one point. So.
Great, thank you.
I'm going to see if we can't get Gina hooked up, so I'm going to head off here and leave it back to Deborah.
Thank you, Bill. Mary Alice, it looks like you have a question.
I already asked it, thank you.
Oh.
You just need to take your hand down, Mary Alice.
Okay. All right. Anything else? Any other projects out there that people are doing related to pollinator gardens or native plants, anything like that? We're still trying to hook up Gina. So we have a minute or two for another question or some comments. I see some great information in the chats about what people are doing. And there's some information as well, Eggs to Butterfly workshop with LaSalle Horticultural Society. I think everybody can see that. That's coming up end of May. And a community garden going on. Taylor Rotary. So we've got some of our attendees from Detroit area. And yeah, and sure, that would be great to spread the word about pollinator gardens with the schools, just as Burke had indicated initially. Mary Lou, do you have a question?
Yeah, I just wanted to know if you could comment on how large a commitment that we're looking for. And I'm thinking of individuals that might be in an apartment and just have a balcony or people that have large yards, is there any limit as to how large or how small that we're looking for a commitment?
I don't think there's any particular limit. I know that, and I think Leo can, we've got Leo here in our attendance, and he's quite knowledgeable about monarchs and milkweed. And I attended a presentation by Leo last year, and he was saying that you can put pollinator friendly planting in all kinds of containers. So you don't even really have to have, the traditional yard to put them in. If anybody follows Doug Telmy's work about the homegrown national parks, if you can put 10 to 20% of your garden as pollinator friendly, that's not every little bit will help. Obviously, more is better, but it doesn't have to be a lot. But what we're trying to do is many pollinator gardens are quite spaced apart, and so there's not a nice pathway for our pollinators to follow from one garden to another, and that is a problem. So if you've only got a small space, you can still plant a nice little pollinator garden. And they suggest a variety, some taller plants, some shorter plants, different, because each plant, their nectar and their pollen have different nutritious values. So if you give the pollinators a variety, then you're going to get more variety of pollinators, but you're also going to give those pollinators a variety of food sources and a variety of protein sources. So you can be quite small in scope, or not. I mean, there's no real limit. We're not looking for financial support per se. We're looking for to spread the news, to spread the word about pollinators, to get people interested, to tell people why it's important. And we know that native plants are probably going to be more efficient. They've evolved with our pollinators. They've evolved in our temperature, our climate, even though the climate is changing, but they're going to require less watering, less actual care. They can be, kind of defend themselves. So there's no real size or amount that you need. Just having more pathways is what we're looking at. Judy, you have a question?
I don't know if you could answer this. Yeah, I do. I don't know if you could answer this or not, Deb. I have a big ditch in front of my house. Is that something that could be planted with pollinators and the pollinator plants? And if I did, is there a lot of upkeep on it? Because I don't like mowing it.
Yeah, no, I wouldn't either. I see people with their ropes and such doing ditches, and it does not look like a lot of fun. So there are pollinator plants that are happier with wet feet or, a wetter soil area. We have our last guest speakers would be Darlene and Vic from the Amherstburg Trees and Plants, these native trees and plants, and they will be on, and they may be able to ask that question directly in terms of what plants they would suggest for a ditch area. They're quite knowledgeable on all the different types of plants, so they might be able to answer your question more directly. I have in my backyard a drain, and the water collects there, so I've got a hold of some swamp rose mallow seeds last year, and they like a wetter environment, and so I can't wait to when the weather gets a little nicer than today and yesterday. I can't wait to see if they actually germinate and we get some action. Any other questions? Okay. All right.
Carol. Can I ask my question? Am I on?
Absolutely.
Okay, this is a really grand idea. Just think about it. It would have to be widespread, but it's workable concerning pathways for the pollinators. If everyone in a community would just think about if you have a planter, for instance, we have 3 planters on the front porch filled with dirt. Throwing in some pollinator attracting seeds in those planters, and everybody, at least 1 or 2 at the side of their house, at the front, at the back, creating a nice pathway for our pollinating insects to travel through a community. But everybody has to get on board, of course. Thank you.
I mean, that's a great idea. And that's really what we're promoting, is we're promoting that we have these pathways. The other thing, I just picked up a book. Oh boy, it's a woman, the Pollinator Victory Garden, I think it is. And she talks about how if you really want to look at a pollinator garden, you want to look at also not just the nectar and the pollen, but also the plantings that will give them protection from the wind, for example, or where they can hibernate or, you know, over the winter, or even a warm stone where you can put down where the butterflies can rest and keep warm because they're cold-blooded. A small, you know, a water dish that you change the water frequently with a small stone that the bees need water. And so there's lots of ways that you can assist with the pollinators, and not just planting the plants, but also giving them the environment that's going to keep them coming to your yard or staying in your yard or whatever. So absolutely, there's lots of things that we can do to assist the pollinators. I mean, it starts with the plants. We need to attract them with the food that they need. But then, I mean, we can grow from that so much more.
And Deb, there's been a few questions in the chat about specifics about what plants to grow. And I'm just holding off with asking them until our speakers have talked. So if you've got some keen questions about what should I plant and how do I replace this in my garden, because that's the idea as we go through this. Someone asked about commitment. It can be something small each year, and one plant is dying off, you know, you need to replace it, and just replacing it with a pollinator rather than ripping out your whole garden and putting in something new. It can be something that you do gradually over the next years. So there's been a couple questions in the chat about that, and I'm hoping that as the guest speakers talk, we'll get a little bit more insight about specifics. And if they don't address your exact question, maybe we'll bring them up then after those speakers have talked.
Okay. Leo, it seems that we've got a couple of minutes here. Do you have anything you want to say in terms of your experience with the monarchs and the milkweeds, since we have you in our audience?
Okay, Deborah. Actually, I just posted the David Suzuki link there in the chat, answering to someone that was saying about the size of the garden. As you know, on the Butterfly Way project, we learned that even a small pot or containers and a balcony is a good start. So it doesn't matter. It doesn't have to be anything fancy, even a native or non-native plant, you know, as long as it attracts some kind of pollinator. No, what I wanted to mention, I'm also part of the Jan Dugdale the Hector Butterfly Workshop that we'll be doing next month, or 2 months from now, actually in May. And as you know, we also have a local Facebook group all dedicated to creating monarch butterflies in general, gardens for the last 3-4 years. And now anyways, I'm not going to go over in details about all the things that we've done. But what I've been doing mainly locally is supplying milkweed seeds to anyone who wants to start his own pollinator garden, and mainly to attract the monarch along all the other pollinators. So if you have a need for any milkweed seeds, they're always free. I have tons in my fridge, always cold stratified, ready to be planted. You can come and pick it up at our house, or I can mail it to you or give you the link where I have all the details for mailing all I basically need is a stamp and an envelope, and then I'll mail you anything you like. And if you have a large project, like I said, I do have tons, literally tons of common milkweed seeds that we harvest locally in the fall, you know, for our city and county.
Just
Leo?
a second.
Oh,
The problem is, I guess our speakers have the wrong link. So what I'm going to have to do is I'm going to have to log off and get back in and send them the link. So I will leave you in charge, Deborah, and hopefully I'll be back shortly.
perfect. Okay, thank you.
Okay.
Thank you for your patience, everyone. As always, you know, something. Leo, I had one more question for you since we have you available. What do you think about the tropical milkweeds? I know it's an issue in the south, but is there an issue for us here in this area?
No, not really. In the south, it has a tendency of developing what they call the OE. It's a fancy name, but basically what it is, it's a disease that will eventually get to the monarchs that are feeding through the caterpillar that are feeding on their plants. And the reason being is because that plant will never die down south, you know, but up here, there is an annual, so it will eventually die in the fall anyways. And every time in the spring, whenever you start with one, it'll never create any problems. In fact, myself and a few other people that I know, we also overwinter some, but we cut them down, you know, because in the winter, we don't need the flowers inside our basement or our garage. It's mainly just to save the roots so that in the spring, it will give us an early start in case our cold weather persists and some of our other milkweed species that we have, you know, the perennial, don't come up in time. At least we have something where they can come and lay their eggs among the other small plants that we start indoors, of course. No, there is no issue. There is no problem in our area for the tropical.
Okay. And then there's a common milkweed, and it tends to
pollinators and
the
it's
common
Deborah
milkweed tends
Harshaw
to spread
organized
more.
this today. I'm not going to stay here for very long. How you can?
Okay, thanks, Hardy. The common milkweed tends to spread more, but if you want to keep it more simple in a smaller area, would the butterfly milkweed be a better, like a better choice for a gardener?
Yes, well, the common milkweed is food, you know, for the long haul. Another good milkweed plant to consider is called a swamp, and it's just like a flower, you know, like it stays put in one place. It does not grow underground, so it will not take over your backyard. Now, in our group, because we do have a lot of people involved in raising monarch, obviously they have a need for a lot of milkweed leaves during the breeding season. So what a lot of people are doing is utilizing a corner of their backyard through either some stone, kind of a raised bed, or some 2x10, 2x12, or whatever. And if you put a wheat cloth on top of your existing grass, and you build a little 4x8, for instance, out of 2x10, your milkweed, your common milkweed, will never invade the rest of your yard because the roots, they have no way of getting out. It's sort of like the same concept that we're using in community gardens.
Okay. The only thing with the weed barrier, though, is it won't let the solitary bees have access to our soil. So there's been suggestions of having a small area of your garden. Hello, Brandy. A small area of your garden left without the cloth or without the bark mulch just to allow solitary bees to find, because many are ground dwelling, and so they'll need to be able to access soil. Okay, so just an update, folks. Just I noticed one of our speakers that wasn't able to get through is now on board, so I'm hoping that means that our other speaker is also on board. So I'm sorry about the delay. There's let me just see if we've got them yet. We should be able to start. Let me see. Okay.
Deb, Gina isn't on still.
Right. Okay. I mean, we could
go to our second speaker.
Yeah, that's what I'm just thinking, that we could do that. If Brandy's ready, and I think everybody's ready to roll, we could get Brandy started. Now, Mary Ellen, you were going to introduce her, so I will mute myself.
Okay, great. So we're going to move to our second speaker, and we'll just flip the order a little bit. So we're going to talk with Brandy Bayshard. She's the founder of Ground Culture, which is an edible and ecological landscaping company that services Windsor and Essex County. Ground Culture offers vegetable gardening and sustainable landscaping consultation, design, and installation. Brandy also teaches in the landscape and horticultural program at college, and she volunteers as the garden lead at the Alley Sunshine Project's Healing Garden, whose aim is to explore and celebrate wellness through community garden. So I'd like to welcome Brandy, and I am super excited to hear what Brandy has to say, because I didn't know this service was even available in our area. So welcome, Brandy, and the stage is yours.
Great. Thank you, Mary Ellen, for the introduction. Can you just give me a thumbs up if you can all hear me? Great. Okay, awesome. So I'm going to go ahead and share my screen so you can see my presentation. So just give me a second here. All right, I'm hoping you can all see this now. And let's just launch right in. So as Mary Ellen said, I will be introducing myself in a second, but I just wanted to welcome everybody to this presentation on creating pollinator-friendly landscapes. I'd also like to thank Deborah from the Rotary Club for inviting me to speak with you today as part of this exciting and very important ode to pollinators. I can hear some feedback. I'm just wondering if there's somebody who is not muted. I'm wondering if you can mute yourself, it'll be a little bit clearer of a presentation for everybody else. Okay, good. I think we're good now. All right, so my name is Brandy Bayshard. I am an instructor of landscape and horticulture at St. Clair College, as well as co-owner of Ground Culture, which is Windsor's specialist in ecological landscaping and vegetable gardens. We help maintain everybody's gardens. I should say we help members of our community grow their own food and create sustainable and regenerative landscapes that nourish both people and the planet. We offer consultation, design, installation, and maintenance services, as well as a seasonal garden club and educational events, just like the presentation that I am giving you today, you're joining me for. So this specific presentation is about the importance of pollinators and how we can support this ecologically and agriculturally significant group of species. Pollinators are defined by any animal or insect that transfers pollen from male to female flower parts, resulting in fertilization, which is essential for the successful reproduction of many flowering crops. These crops produce food, fibers, medicinal products. Pollinators can be birds, bees, bats, butterflies, wasps, flies, and so many more. 1 out of every 3 bites of food you eat was made possible by pollinators. Many fruits, veggies, seeds, and animal feed all rely on pollinators, which not only support food for us, but also support other wildlife and healthy ecosystems. Threats to pollinators include loss of habitat due to urbanization and human development, scarcity of food sources due to biodiversity loss, pesticide use in the landscape and agricultural industries, and disease due to a lack of balance in our natural ecosystems. I think my pictures are just loading here. So what can we do to help? We can create pollinator-friendly landscapes. Whether you have a yard, balcony, gardens at your office or school, or are a member of a community garden, you can incorporate pollinator-friendly elements into any outdoor space. Well, there are my beautiful pictures. So on the right, the largest picture, that's Vanessa. She co-owns the company with me and is often out coaching our clients or designing kitchen gardens. She also is a hobby gardener herself and has a beautiful edible landscape right in the heart of Windsor. The very top photo there, that is part of the crew of the Alley Sunshine Project at the community garden I help manage. And they're sitting in front of a pollinator strip we installed last summer, which also doubled as a cut flower garden. And this little bottom bubble here, that's one of our clients in the heart of Walkerville, who had a very underproductive landscape before bringing us in, and we ended up designing this beautiful kitchen garden for her. And as you can see, there's flowers scattered all around the garden to bring pollinators to her veggie patch. A well-designed outdoor space can offer pollinators habitat, food, and protection. So let's go ahead and talk a little bit more about what each of those things mean. So these are the elements that make up a healthy pollinator garden. A pollinator-friendly space should include food sources, habitat, and be tended to using ecologically sound practices. Plant native. Choose plants native to your region and select species of trees, plants, and shrubs that are rich in pollen and nectar. Wherever possible, choose locally grown and pesticide-free plants. Great landscape plants native to Southern Ontario include black-eyed Susan, blue flag iris, and purple coneflower for a splash of color, big blue stem and switchgrass for ornamental grasses, and eastern red cedar, sugar maple, and eastern redbud for taller shrubs and trees. This beautiful tree here, this is the eastern redbud tree, and I just love seeing those bloom in the spring. They put out their colorful magenta colored buds before their leaves, so it's just striking to see a tree covered in completely magenta blooms without any green in there. And it's hard to believe that, you know, plants native to our own ecosystem are so vibrant and beautiful and probably underappreciated. Mass plantings. So what does that mean? A mass planting is a swath of the same plant together, which makes foraging easier for pollinators. Planting groupings of the same plant species together also gives a more intentional and well-curated aesthetic to your garden. This also makes tending to your garden easier. This is a win-win for people and pollinators alike. Pollinators have a specific way of viewing the world around them, and it's much different from the way we see the world. Their eyes are like a million mirrors that reflect images back to them rather than just two to give them one single image. So when we have the same plant planted all together, they can just hop from plant to plant to plant without needing to change their foraging technique. Every flower has a different access to the pollen and nectar. And if you have a bunch of diversity all together in one space, it's a little trickier because the pollinator has to change up its technique for accessing that pollen every single time. So when they're planted in swaths, it's easy for them to just hop from plant to plant and easily access that food. They work so hard already, right? We want to make it easy on them. So another tip is to provide season-long blooms. Pollinators need a continuous source of food in the form of pollen and nectar. So select a variety of plants that will bloom all the way from spring to fall. The example shown here includes false Solomon seal there at the top, which is an intriguing spring flowering plant, followed by black-eyed Susans, a bright and showy summer flower, and then followed up by the New England aster, which is quintessential with its purple fall blooms. Make sure there's always something blooming in your garden all season long. These are just examples, but there's plenty of combinations you can incorporate into your own garden to make sure that there's always something. And again, this is good for us too, right? This brings more aesthetic characteristics to your garden when there's always something blooming. Although foliage is nice too. It's nice to have color year round, right? So host plants. What is a host plant? Beneficial insects often only lay eggs on specific plants. They host these eggs and larvae. For example, monarch butterflies lay their eggs exclusively on milkweed, which is the sole food source for their larvae. The native range of pawpaw also overlaps with the native range of the zebra swallowtail butterfly. Hence, the caterpillars of which feed exclusively on young leaves of this fruiting Carolinian tree. So it's important to have these host plants in your garden so that your pollinators are welcome to stay there, create habitat, and perpetuate the life cycle of new generations of pollinators. So varieties matter. Plant single bloom flowers for easier access to pollen and nectar. Overcrowded petals of double or triple bloom varieties can actually block access to food. As you can see here in this slide, the teddy bear sunflower variety shown on the left or the bottom has petals blocking access to the vital parts of the flower necessary for pollination. Whereas the variety on the right exposes the reproductive parts of the flower, which are easily accessible to pollinators. So although double bloom varieties are really pretty and they look so much more lush, they're not as effective as providing food to pollinators. So it's a nice compromise to grow single bloom varieties, which are not only beautiful for us to look at, but also way more efficient at providing food for our little critters that we're trying to invite to the garden. I think they're just as pretty too. So this one's easily forgotten, but it's important to provide water in a wildlife-friendly or pollinator-friendly garden. A bird bath, pond, or shallow dish of water with partially submerged pebbles will allow insects to land and drink up. So birds and insects drink water too. It's actually really adorable if you've ever just sat quietly and observed your garden and then came across a little bee drinking water. It's just the cutest thing. So this is a really important element of gardening, no matter what your focus is. If you're just trying to invite pollinators to your garden, or if you're trying to grow healthier food with more nutrient content, or maybe you're trying to abide by more ecologically friendly gardening practices, I would say one of the most arguably important things is to prioritize your soil health. So to avoid common issues leading to gardeners using harmful products like pesticides, herbicides, landscape fabric, focus on building soil health to create a healthy, naturally resilient garden. Add organic matter like decomposed leaf litter, compost, or worm castings each fall or spring. And avoid over digging your soil to maintain a natural, undisturbed soil structure. I actually have a t-shirt that says Team No Dig, and I should have wore that today. So avoid the use of chemicals, as these are harmful to pollinators and other wildlife. And lastly, mulch your soil for natural weed suppression, temperature regulation, and moisture retention, but leave some soil bare, as many bees and other insects burrow into the soil for habitat. And I think that's maybe what was being discussed just as I logged on earlier. I heard think Deborah talking about leaving some bare soil for the solitary bees. So although mulching has its benefits, it's also nice to leave a little bit of soil bare. And usually that comes hand in hand with the vegetable garden. There's often some bare soil where the vegetables are coming out of the ground anyway. Speaking of vegetable gardens, pollinators play a vital role in a veggie garden. So we highly recommend incorporating flowering plants in and around the vegetable garden to attract pollinators to your food producing crops, which rely on pollination for fruit production. You'll also be attracting other beneficial insects that prey on the pests that can infest your vegetable garden. So not just pollinators, but other beneficial insects as well. Think of your garden as a mini ecosystem that relies on biodiversity to be sustainable and productive. This is a photo of one of our clients' gardens who came to us looking for a complete transformation of this kind of awkward strip between his and his neighbor's driveway. The strip of grass has 3 pawpaw trees planted in it, which had been there for years without much growth and 0 fruit production. The space was pretty high maintenance from regular grass cutting and weed whacking, and it didn't produce anything useful. And personally, I don't think this has any curb appeal. So in the first year, we removed the grass and planted a diverse range of native plants, some ground covers, some non-native but non-invasive flowering perennials, and some edible crops as well in there. The space is now pollinator friendly, productive, and full of texture and color. I just love this so much more than the grass strip. So this is that same exact space 2 years after the transformation. And the garden now produces bountiful harvests of pawpaws, as you can see here in my hand, cut flowers, culinary herbs, and it provides habitat to many pollinator species. We see butterflies and bees and wasps and little flies around there all the time. It also looks so much more lush and colorful, and I love this part. It often draws neighbors in to take a peek at what's growing, and they appreciate the beauty of the space. Do you recognize the 3 pawpaws from the previous slide? That's these ones just back here. They've nearly tripled in size since we removed the grass and provided a more nurturing, balanced, and diverse environment. So we did not do anything else to this space other than what I mentioned. And like I said, the trees have basically tripled in size. So let me just quickly go back 2 slides so you can see what they look like. So that's just over a total 3-year period, which is very unusual for trees to grow that quickly, but it just shows how stunted they were from the grass. An important thing to keep in mind when creating a pollinator-friendly landscape is that you don't need to start from scratch. You can slowly incorporate elements into your existing landscape or simply swap out exotic plants for native plants little by little each season. It could be, a work in progress. It doesn't need to be something that you overhaul all at once. That's pretty overwhelming and expensive and a lot of work, right? So just step by step and little by little, steady as she goes. So this concludes our pollinator presentation. I appreciate you all for joining me today, and I believe there's time for questions. So I'd be more than happy to answer any questions you have about pollinator gardens or vegetable gardening or ecological landscape altogether.
Thank you, Brandy. That was excellent. Lots of good ideas for me. I'm in the process of growing my own garden, so I'm thrilled. Now we have time for some questions.
That was a great job, Brandy. Thank you for enlightening us. I actually have a couple of questions. I have a question about you mentioned pawpaws, and I've wanted to get a pawpaw for a long time. But I know there's some maybe not so nice sides of pawpaws too. I don't know if that's a rumor or if that's actually true. And you look like you're smiling, so I think you know what I'm talking about. So I'll let you answer that one, because I am interested in the pawpaw, but I want to know how close can it be to my house?
I have no idea what you're talking about. I just love pawpaws and I encourage everyone to plant them. I mean, okay, so the two things that come to my mind are they have very large fruit. It's actually the largest tree fruit native here in North America. So if you don't harvest all of them, they do drop quite a bit of fruit on the ground, and they have a very short shelf life. So they're not like apples where you can go and collect them off the ground days after they've dropped and enjoy them. Pawpaws pretty much need to be harvested right away. But if you have a space where it's okay, where fruit drops and kind of decomposes into the ground, and that's fine. But generally, they are a lot of cleanup. But any pawpaw trees that I've tended to, we harvest them. Like, they're just so delicious and such a rare fruit that you can't find in stores. So they're often they're not staying on the ground very long. But I'm thinking, because you said something about being close to your house, that you're thinking about maybe a damaging root system.
I was actually thinking of the smell. Is there an odor with pawpaw trees?
Okay, I was going to say that too, but I thought there's no way that's what she's talking about.
Okay.
So that's funny. Yes, pawpaws do have oh my gosh, and I can't believe I'm going to say this on camera, but they smell like rotting meat, the flowers. But you can't you absolutely can't smell them just walking by. Like, I've never heard of getting a whiff of them just from, no, it's, if you were to go right up to the flower and smell them, then they do have like a foul smelling flower. But even then, I don't think it's a problem at all. I mean, I've worked very closely within the pawpaw trees, pruning them and working around them, and I've never had an unpleasant experience.
The second question I have about pawpaws, because there's several people on Zoom right now who are talking about school gardens and community gardens. Where can we get them? Because it's not really something that you sort of go to the Zare's, flower garden and find them. So where can people find them?
Yeah, I've never seen them commercially available before. So I have seeds and propagate them myself. So the best way for you to get your hands on pawpaws, if you're in Essex County or anywhere really for that matter, is to go in your local gardening groups, ask who has pawpaw trees, and ask for some of those seeds. Because like I said, with all those fruits dropping on the ground, if you can't keep up with either eating them or freezing them, then you're going to have a lot of seeds to share. And even if you are actively harvesting, I'm sure there's always someone out there who would be more than happy to share the seeds, because I've never met someone who grows pawpaws who is not enthusiastic about spreading them. So for sure, propagate your own seeds. They are tricky to, they have a very involved stratification process. They need to be put in the fridge for months, and then they take a long time to germinate once they're planted. But yeah, also we have them at St. Clair College. The students grow the pawpaw seedlings, so that's something you could look out for when and if they do their garden center. And ask people like me. I often have many pawpaw seedlings available to give away, and I don't have any currently right now, but last year I had like 30 pawpaw seedlings. I was just giving them away, so they're around. If you can get your paws on them, I recommend it.
Great. I don't see any other questions in the chat. If anybody has a question, feel free to put it in there, or even maybe turn on your mic to ask a question too.
Mary Alice has a question.
Hi.
I see that here. Oh, hi, Mary Alice.
Hi, my question is rabbits. They absolutely decimate my native plants. They eat all the coneflowers, they eat the cardinal flower, they eat the lobelia, they eat everything. What can I do about the rabbits?
So it's a bit of a tricky one, because typically with rabbits, I recommend critter exclusion fencing, but that's only practical around your vegetable garden. To put that in a landscape where you have your native plants growing, that's kind of ridiculous, right? So the only thing you can do, aside from having a pet out there scaring them off, is to plant things that would deter rabbits, or use smells or strong odors or flavors on things to deter them. So I've heard of people sprinkling cayenne pepper on the leaves of the plants that they're eating, and the rabbits get a little taste of that, and then they learn that this plant is not enjoyable to eat. But often you know, there's so many rabbits in an area that they all have to experience that for that to really be effective. The other thing is that I've heard of people planting a border around a lot of their gardens of alliums, anything in the allium family. So chives, garlic, onions. I have an entire border of chives leading up to my walkway where I have strawberry plants growing. And the chives are very pungent. They have a very strong odor and they're beautiful as a landscape plant. They have tall, straight, you know, very fine foliage with purple blooms that are gorgeous little pom-poms. And yeah, lots of people don't think of incorporating edible foods into their landscape, but it very much so is a pretty landscape plant, and it deters rabbits from getting to my strawberries. But you kind of have to expect a bit of a loss regardless. But if they're eating all of them, then you could try some of those things. I would say try some cayenne pepper or even salt around the garden.
Thank you.
Yeah. I just checking the chat here. Yeah. Oh, Liz Atkinson says, eat them. Are you talking about the pawpaws or the rabbits? Okay, I think that's it for questions. So thanks everyone. It was lovely being here. Can't wait for the next presentation. So I'll just unmute myself and say goodbye.
Thanks so much, Brandy.
Thank you so much. And I just put a link to Brandy's website in the chat as well. So please take a look at that website. There's places to sign up for workshops. And I will be definitely visiting that soon as well, Brandy. So I hope to see you in person soon. Thank you very much.
All right, are we ready to bring our next guest in? And that would be Gina. Let's see if we can find Gina.
Hi, Deborah, I'm here.
Oh, hello, hello. I apologize for the confusion and you having trouble getting into our
Apology is mine,
webinar.
Gina.
All good, I'm here
Glad
now.
you could make it though.
Yeah. All right, whenever you're ready to begin, Gina, and I know your time's at hand, so we'll do our best to accommodate for you.
So I'll just share my screen here, make sure it's the right one. Here we are. And then let me just pull my notes over so I can go through them. So everyone can see my screen. I'll put it in presenter mode too, so you don't see all of the, there we go. Okay. All right, so hello everyone. My name's Gina, and today I'm going to talk to you all about monarchs and milkweed and the significance to our area. I work with the Conservation Authority as the Partnerships and Outreach Coordinator, and a lot of my work focuses on connecting people to our natural spaces in a different variety of ways, mostly through stewardship action that includes litter cleanups, invasive species pulls, community tree plantings, and native garden development and maintenance, and a whole bunch of other things. So right now we're gearing up for our spring community restoration season, and we've got quite a few projects on the go. And so, yeah, I get to do a lot of different things. And also in my role, I work with the Detroit River Canadian Cleanup on the Canadian Remedial Action Plan for the Detroit River as well. So really briefly, I'm just going to talk about some of the core concepts of monarchs for 101. There's a lot of really great resources out there that go into way more detail than I'm going to provide today that you can follow up on and keep yourself informed as the new monarch season is upon us. And I'll leave you with some follow-up, more information, resources that you can read on your own to continue learning about the monarch butterfly. And so really, you know, what is the monarch butterfly? You know, we know it's well known for its orange, black, and white colors. It has a really long migration journey every year. It's very, very, very important connection to milkweed plants, and it undergoes metamorphosis, which probably is one of my most favorite things about the monarch. It's just like so fantastic and still a mystery to me, and despite how much I continue trying to learn about this amazing creature or species. I mean, the monarch is showy. It's, you know, it's when you see one crossing your path, it's just like, oh, monarch. you know, it's every time in my whole life, I hope to never, ever get, I hope to always be amazed to see that when I'm out walking around and stuff. They're relatively large. They have a wingspan reaching 93 to 105 millimeters. The caterpillar itself is easily recognized. It has black, white, and yellow stripes, and it's very bright and warning, which we'll talk about when I get to that slide. And of course, again, milkweed, we know that they're deeply connected because milkweed is their only host species. And yeah, monarchs are very interesting. And so when it comes to monarch life cycle too, I think this is really interesting with the life cycle and the metamorphosis in terms of how it goes through its metamorphosis. So from egg to adult, there are many changes that monarch butterfly will go through, and they have very specific habitat requirements in each stage. And it takes about a month from an egg to fully go through into all these stages and then come out into metamorphosize into an adult butterfly. From the egg stage, they're normally laid on the bottom side of milkweed leaves to offer protection, but eggs can, you know, generally be found anywhere on the plant, but that's the first place that a female butterfly will drop her eggs. And monarch eggs are about the size of a pinhead. And you can kind of see the little ridges on the sides of the eggs. And this helps distinguish it as a monarch egg and not a milkweed sap bubble or egg from another type of insect, which also can be deposited on milkweed plants as well. And so larval stage, you just see this really tiny caterpillar emerge from the egg. And it's so tiny, but it doesn't stay tiny long because they're really hungry. These caterpillars are just ravenous eaters. And this caterpillar will consume its egg, what's left of it, and then continue to start feeding on the milkweed plant as it grows into its different life stages. And so they grow a lot in 2 weeks. They grow through 5 stages, which are known as instars in their larval stage. There are 5 instars in their larval stage. And as they go through these stages, they molt or shed their outer layer and they eat it. And that helps them to grow stronger into the next stage. And so this is a really good visual to show you from the first instar all the way to the 5th instar, just how big these stages bring them through their life cycle and the physical changes that they go through, but also the colors that still remain the same that are true telltales of monarchs. And so when a monarch larva or caterpillar is ready to form its chrysalis, it crawls away from the plant it was eating and finds a sheltered area. It then starts to spin a silk button with the spinneret located underneath its mandibles or jaws. And once the button is spun, it turns back around and hangs upside down and in the typical J shape, which it fixes itself and then goes through the metamorphosis into the chrysalis phase. And it's a myth that butterflies and moths turn into soup inside the pupa. If you look carefully, even a newly formed chrysalis, you'll see the winged veins beneath the surface. And I think that's really still part of the mystery of what happens. Like, how does this happen? What is going on? And I mean, there's lots of studies you can read if you have access to scientific journals. And as you kind of go through some of the resources I'll leave you with, this is a huge topic of interest when it comes to monarchs. Like, what is happening in this specific stage before the adult butterfly ecloses out of its chrysalis? And so as it goes through the jade chrysalis stage, you know when it's ready to come out as a butterfly as soon as that green color sort of disappears and the chrysalis becomes a more clear color. You can see that the adult is more formed and ready to come out. And so this is about 10 to 14 days after pupation. The pigmentation of the adult butterfly begins to show, like I said, and it takes about 30 to 60 seconds for a monarch to come out of the casing of the chrysalis and make its way out. And you'll see that the wings look very small and deformed at first, but the monarch will soon pump from its abdomen important liquid from its abdomen into its wings to help expand them into their full size. And it'll hang upside down for about 4 to 5 hours after it ecloses to let its wings dry out and harden into their shape. The adult butterfly at this stage is very fragile for the first 2 days after eclosing, but they can fly as soon as their wings harden. So depending on environmental conditions and where it's coming out, the monarch, will fly away or flutter away when it's ready, once its wings are hardened and it's strong enough. So just a quick check to see monarch male versus female. How do you know when you see one flying around? It's pretty simple. When you look, if you do get a glance at the full wings open, you can see that a male monarch butterfly can be easily distinguished because it has 2 visible back spots on the hind wings. And monarch males have a little bit thinner, the females webbing in between, like the black coloring on the webs, are a little bit thicker than males, and the female has no spots on the wings. So let's start talking about milkweed and to start making those connections with monarchs. Monarchs love milkweed. They cannot survive without milkweed. And remember, they're hungry caterpillars. And milkweed is the only plant species that monarchs can feed on. They don't like sample black-eyed Susans or eastern redbuds like Brandy talked about. They're really only able to feed off of milkweed. And that is also sort of the layering of the monarch story across North America on its migration as well. And we know that females lay their eggs on milkweed, and milkweed sap is a huge part of the monarch's success. They develop a protection against bird predators because the sap is toxic. And as they feed on the milkweed through their larval stage, the toxin stays in their system and makes the adult butterfly even poisonous to bird predators. And so here are some examples of milkweed that are very common to our area. This is common milkweed. It's grown pretty much everywhere. If you're driving by roadsides, open fields, it's common in people's gardens. And it grows in very large patches. So like this picture, well-drained soils, and it's common. Some of the anecdotal thoughts of incorporating common milkweed in your garden are that they do sort of colonize and they take over. And so when you think of your garden and you have individual plants that you maintain and maybe mulch around, this will eventually turn into something that looks very similar to this photo, and because the seed is close and it colonizes. And so if you're looking for a more maintained garden, this is good for, you just have to kind of keep that in mind, that it will take over in certain spots of your garden. But nonetheless, it's still important. Some people put them in pots, and or if you have a large field and you don't care, then go for it, right? Why not? And so swamp milkweed is another common type of milkweed that grows here, and it's more in wetter areas. You see, like at the edges of ponds and environments that have water, or even if it dries out, there's water available from a landscape perspective. But if you want to grow it in your garden too, it does just fine. And you can see that it's still very typical of milkweed, but the leaf system is a little bit different than the common milkweed. They're smaller, thinner, but it's still milkweed. Marshy areas, and it's more vibrant than the common milkweed as a color of the petals. And then of course, this one is very well beloved because it's so bright and showy when you see it in people's gardens or out when you're walking, if it's in a naturalized area. It also really likes well-drained soils. It can be a little bit finicky, that it does have a taproot, so it doesn't really like to be transplanted very much. But once you get your butterfly milkweed established in the ground in your garden, it'll be there as long as it's well taken care of. And I do wanted to mention something along the lines of tropical milkweed. I know that it's critical, like there are a lot of species of milkweed across North America. There's over 70, and it is becoming common to see different types of milkweed that are not native to Windsor, Essex be sold in supermarkets and garden centers. and it's popular to grow them in our backyards. And we know that even if it's not native to Windsor and Essex, milkweed is super important still as a food source to monarch caterpillars, but planting them can be detrimental in the long term, as the genetics of the seed that is either tropical milkweed or other types that are not native here, they're not really suitable to growing in our region, and it could disrupt the natural synchronicity of native milkweeds being available when caterpillars and butterflies are in need of them, specifically on their migration and their journey. And milkweed plants just produce a lot of seed. They have big, beautiful seed pods. They're healthy, and when they're ready to go, the little silk parachutes that help get them across the landscape are spreading non-native seed. Even if just a few people are putting them in their backyards, it could impact over time, compounding the issue. And so I do just want to say, it is being recognized as a backyard plant. It is beautiful. I mean, you can't deny that those colors together, it looks great. One of the other reasons why it's not great to plant tropical milkweed is it propagates easily, thus the seeds. It's attractive to humans, also to monarchs. But one of the areas that is probably to take into most consideration is that it doesn't really die back in the wintertime. And so any of the issues that this plant comes with, like including a known parasite known as OE, I'm not going to try to pronounce the Latin name, but it's a very big issue to monarchs, and it could keep that parasite on the plant even without it being able to die back in the wintertime, thus next season introducing that parasite again to the new monarchs of the spring and summer. And so when the caterpillars hatch and start to eat the milkweed plants, they can ingest that parasite, which impacts their development and life cycle. And again, when the native plants die back, which they do, any sort of those seasonal issues will die back and not expose the next round of monarchs in the next season. So no tropical milkweed. If you can help it, there's other native milkweed that's available that you can find, and it's just a better choice for your gardens. Another species of butterfly, which you might have noticed flying around, is the Viceroy. It looks very, very similar to the monarch, but it doesn't eat milkweed. And so it just evolved by mimicking the defense mechanism that the monarch has established by eating milkweed, knowing that if it flashes that red or that orange and black and white as it's fluttering around, it has a high chance of not getting preyed upon. And when you're looking on a landscape and you're walking around and you see a monarch butterflies are more graceful, they're bigger, they don't have, so you can see on this photo, the Viceroy has that black band on the two hind wings at the bottom. That is your telltale sign that that's a Viceroy. But like I said, when you see a monarch fluttering around, it's more graceful, like it flows between the flowers. But a Viceroy is kind of like, its fluttering pattern is a little bit more choppy, and it's a smaller in size, but still nonetheless interesting as a biomimicry choice in evolution for continuing to build up your defense against predators. And so when we look at milkweed as a community, there's so much things happening or going on in a milkweed patch. It's a very interesting place. If you spend time in a patch of milkweed, it's entertainment. There's a lot of insects that spend time in a milkweed patch. They're attracted to the nectar, they're attracted to the pollen, the leaves, the seeds, the stems, and even the roots of the plant. And of course, predatory insects hang around milkweed as well. So it's a very dynamic community. And these are some of the bugs you might come across when you're just observing a milkweed patch. The milkweed tussock moth caterpillar, it consumes the milkweed plant, and you can see here as the caterpillar stage, it has those telltale signs of a milkweed sap eater. It has the black and the orange and the white as well. And also the milkweed bugs, they're red and they're black, and they consume milkweed as well. And of course, everyone's least favorite, well, I'm sure in this community, there's lots of least favorite bugs in our gardens, but milkweed aphids. It's so common to see aphids on milkweed plants in our gardens. And a lot of people that have native gardens and native plants in their gardens don't use anything to counter these pests or bugs. So what I've done in my garden when I see that, usually it's like late season after the blooms are sort of dying back, you see these aphid colonies coming in, just spray it gently with your hose and wash them off. One of the things I learned when I was getting some training about monarchs is the aphids secrete like a honeydew tasting secretion on the plants. And so when a female monarch is ready to lay her eggs, and I didn't explain this in the beginning, but I'll say it now, monarchs have terrible eyesight, which is another amazing thing about monarchs, because they go on this amazing journey and they just have very specific needs in their life cycle. But monarchs don't have great eyesight. So when a female is ready to lay her eggs, she actually tastes the plant to know that it's a that it's a milkweed. And so when you see this aphid colony on your milkweed plants and they're secreting that honeydew sort of flavor, she may not recognize it as a milkweed plant and flutter away from that opportunity to lay her eggs. And so as gardeners, if you without including anything other than just organic gardening style and just a little bit of elbow grease, you could just spray off some of the aphids on your plants, and hopefully that'll encourage the next monarch coming by to lay her egg on your milkweed plant. Let's talk about migration. So we know that monarchs go on an incredible journey, and the annual migration is so unique and amazing as a phenomenon to sort of think about. And it's the only butterfly known to make a two-way migrations, similar to how birds do. Unlike other butterflies that can overwinter as larvae, pupa, or even adults in some species, monarchs cannot survive the cold winters of northern climates in North America. Using environmental cues, the monarchs just know when it's time to travel south for the winter. They use a combination of air currents and thermals to travel their long distances, and some fly as far as 3,000 miles to reach their winter home. And the reason monarchs are able to fly such great distances is because they know how to save their energy. And during fall migration, monarchs conserve their energy by riding columns of rising warm air, similar to birds and any other animal that's doing flight migration. And they just take advantage of those strong winds to help speed up their flights. They're not fluttering the entire time and tiring themselves out. And so in our area, places like Point Pelee and Holiday Beach on peninsulas that go into the Great Lakes are very common locations to observe migration. And so on days where it's raining, but you know that the next day is going to be dry and warm and sunny, that is a perfect time to go to those places to observe monarchs roosting and waiting for that nice warm air current to take them and give them that extra push away from our area to start their migration away from Windsor, Essex. So my best advice to you is in September, October, as monarchs are beginning to be reported on their migration, keep an eye on the weather. If you want to go down and see what a roost of monarchs looks like, you're going to have to do it in the rain, because on those beautiful warm days, they're gone. Once those cues are happening to them, they're going to take advantage of the really nice weather, but of course they can't fly in the rain. So that's when you can see them in those peninsula areas in the trees waiting for the weather system to change, just as a little tip. And of course, when winter's over, which is where we're at right now, we're in the welcoming part of their migration in our area, they certainly become more active, and over a 3 to 5 week period, the butterflies begin to mate in larger numbers to prepare for their spring return. So what's happening right now is in our area, the butterflies that we said goodbye to in October, their great-great-grandchildren will be welcoming them in the springtime. That's who we'll be saying hello to. And so they start by waking up as butterflies in Mexico, and then start to have their next generation And that generation follows a milkweed highway across the entire continent of blooms to continue to support their migration early on. And so in the southern states right now, as they have warmer weather, their milkweed is popping up, encouraging the new monarchs to come. And that milkweed highway is all the way back up north into our area, in synchronicity with the monarch migration. It's synchronized. It's just in a very beautiful phenomena of nature that is just telling of how amazing these creatures are. And so, yeah, by the end of March, the colony split up, going to their areas that they're going to end up in and across the continent. And the butterflies search for milkweed to lay their eggs. Those survivors produce children, grandchildren, and great-grandchildren to recolonize the northern states and provinces, which we will see until fall migration begins. And so how do you know what's going on? There's some really great resources through Journey North that map monarch spottings, but also milkweed blooms. And so you can look at these maps together and know what's happening on their migration path at any time of the fall or spring season to see, what's happening from a larger zoomed out view of migration. And so this is something that I would encourage this group to consider, is getting an account or doing some citizen science reporting to Journey North. Because if you do have milkweed in your yard or you spot monarchs, you can report those spottings. And this helps to improve the understanding of migration through Journey North, who is sort of the well-known organization that does the monarch counts and everything. And so when they do monarch counts from a larger population perspective, they do it during the overwintering, because that is the easiest way to count butterflies all at once. And so while they're roosting in the OML fir forest in Mexico, they're counting large numbers of monarchs that represent all across the continent. And so from 1994 to 2019, these are the numbers that are currently available from Journey North. And you can kind of see a pattern of decline over the population over the last couple of decades. And so a sustained population of 6 hectares is the target for monarch recovery, meaning that there's improvements happening based on large conservation efforts from Canada, US, and Mexico. And so there are things things are improving, but over the last couple decades, monarchs have really struggled in their populations. And so in Canada, the monarch is listed as endangered by the Committee on the Status of Endangered Wildlife, or COSEWIC, because that's a mouthful. And that is sort of the authority group that decides on statuses of our native wildlife and plants in the country. And this status update was agreed in November 2016. And so they're based on all the population studies and whatnot, this committee, it listed the monarch as endangered just a couple of years ago. And so from a threats perspective, there's so many things that have impacted the monarch population. It's very dynamic. The fact that the monarch has such a large migration pathway, but also that they're just solely rely on milkweed. They're keystone species. They tell us what's going on, what the health of our ecosystems are like, and how our programs are running. And so herbicide application, illegal logging in the overwintering areas in Mexico, insecticide predation, invasive species encroaching in on opportunities to incorporate native plants on a backyard or landscape perspective, parasites and disease, climate change. So if you think about the timing of some of our more severe storms, they happen during monarch migration. And if a huge hurricane is coming while monarchs are on their migration, that impacts where they end up in their navigation. Warmer fall weather is confusing. It interrupts their normal environmental cues. And sure, it goes on the length of sun, but if the weather is warm, that would just be confusing to a monarch butterfly. And of course, loss of spring and summer breeding habitat in North America. And I would say the loss of the most, when monarch habitat is decimated, it really impacts their life cycle and having access to nectar as adult butterflies, unfortunately. And so because monarchs have always fascinated everyone, and they just bring us together. It's just similar to how the panda is representative of international efforts for endangered species. The monarch is our Windsor Essex endangered species. That really is, it's a critical species for our area, and people have a lot of really good stories and connections to the monarch butterfly. And so from a conservation perspective, I'm going to go through what our countries are doing, but then also really just focus on what this group can be doing and how you can encourage other people to do what they can to support monarch butterfly populations in milkweed. And so there is a full conservation plan between Canada, Mexico, and the United States that they're working together to protect monarch populations, their migratory flyways, and their habitat. And you can download this resource. You can read it in full if you like. It's very detailed, and it kind of tells what each country has committed to work towards improving the monarch populations and also habitat. But then also from an individual perspective and a local, very, very local perspective, there's so many things we can do to support monarchs. So like I said, reporting a sighting through the citizen science opportunity through Journey North, you can help contribute to that, that knowledge base that helps with understanding migration and when certain things are happening and not happening during their season. There are local nature clubs. One of them that I can recommend is the Essex County Field Naturalist Club. They have every spring and summer, they have naturalist specific events that you can join in. They do butterfly counts for the region. They do nature walks. And of course, the Essex Region Conservation Authority as well. We have lots of things coming up in the springtime to support habitat restoration. And be a good steward. So I know everyone here is sort of, preaching to the choir. You are good stewards. You're interested in gardening. You're interested in improving the health of your backyards to support things other than just our own personal interests with gardening. We have wildlife in mind. We have native insects and birds and pollinators and everything in mind when we're looking at stewardship in our backyards. And it's really important to look at all the resources that are available to do what, your best with your backyard and your gardens. Reporting illegal activity. So that is just, that's through the provincial, I don't have the resources. I think I included it. If I didn't, I can follow up. But, if you see something happening where that could impact any habitat that's out there, you can report it and it could be investigated. I'll just leave it at that. You can continue learning about the monarch butterfly. So like I said, this presentation today is just sort of 101. Here's a bunch of information, and hopefully the opportunities continue to interest you by checking out all those resources that I'll share afterwards. And there's local Facebook groups and pages that you can follow to sort of keep in touch with monarch enthusiasts and people that are counting. And so I think the next one, and these are the few that I follow on Facebook. So the Peely Paradise Sanctuary Monarch Way Station number 10275. This is Darlene. She is the monarch lady that I always refer to her page for numbers. She is the one who does the counts with Point Peely. And so she has an accurate understanding, and she shares her counts every time she goes to Point Peely. She has beautiful photos of them roosting, and she does the migration counts in the morning, and she's just very knowledgeable about monarchs, and I encourage you to check out her Facebook page. There's another page called the Monarch Butterfly Enthusiasts of Windsor and Essex County, and of course Windsor Essex nature sightings. Just in general, sometimes there's butterflies, but it's a bit of everything on that page. And if you have something to share, they usually share your sightings as well. And spring's coming. So guess what? We're going to be sighting a lot of great things happening. And it's going to be, spring is on its way. And that means all of the animals and birds and everything else that are on their way will start showing up. And we know that some of them are already here. And of course, more resources. So these are some additional opportunities and organizations that you can turn to for information. Some of them are in general about monarch life cycles. Some of them are doing research. Some of them focus on habitat, and then some of them focus on larger policy. And so there's just so much information out there that you can research and go to. And I do want to say these organizations are science-based, they are research-based, they're authorities of the subject matter, and I would turn to them and reference any of the information if I had to do a presentation like this, so that I would make sure that I'm reporting the same information that the experts are sharing as well. So I do have, so that is the end of my formal presentation. I do want to say one anecdotal thing. From a rearing perspective, there's no scientific evidence that says that individuals rearing monarchs are improving the local populations or North American or migratory populations when they do the counts. I do not recommend rearing monarchs. There are challenges, there are issues with it becoming more popular. Monarchs are wild, they're an endangered species. They have a really specific life cycle. And there are permits through the Ministry of Natural Resources. Actually, it's like Ministry of Mines, Development, Natural Resources and Forestry now, that you can become trained and certified with a permit to rear for education purposes, to do presentations. And so my caveat is that I do have the training. I did take the training so that I can do interpretation as a staff person from the Essex Region Conservation Authority, and to do outreach to continue to expand people's awareness about monarchs. And I would say the number one thing you can do is plant one milkweed plant in your garden. If at the very minimum, that's what you can contribute, you will make an absolute difference. And I think the most important takeaway message for monarchs is to improve their habitat as ways to give back to the species. And so I have no more slides past this one. And I thank you for the opportunity to share with everyone today. And I can answer any questions you may have. And if I can't answer your question, I can take the time this week to follow up with some more information for you. Because like I said, I'm not totally an expert, and I go to the experts for things I don't know myself. So happy to answer any questions you may have today.
Gina, thank you very much for your presentation. If you could unshare your screen.
Yes.
We can see you, and I don't see any questions. Okay, so there is one question. Is
Sure.
rearing the same as bringing the caterpillars into an enclosure to protect against elements?
Yes. Yes, because you're responsible for feeding them and cleaning them and keeping them safe and releasing them and all of the things that are involved in that. Yeah.
Okay. And then we have another one about, is there a way to keep aphids or ants off milkweed?
That's a great question. I don't know if Brandy is still here. I think there's probably some really interesting ways to keep aphids off. Like I said, I just usually, when I'm watering my garden, if I notice them starting, I'll just use my hose and like gently evict them, if you will. But there's other ways that people have done them. Like I know some people will use a little bit of a spray that has some natural material in it. Yeah, and I think as long as it's natural, it helps protect the milkweed, which in turn helps protect the caterpillar or the egg and the monarch butterfly.
Excellent. And then somebody else was asking, wouldn't the caterpillars run out of food if only one milkweed plant is planted?
That's a great question. So in nature, when a female monarch butterfly is ready to lay her egg, she only lays one egg on a milkweed plant that she finds, because she knows how much her little caterpillars are going to be eating. But that's just one female butterfly. But if there's 10 more that come through and they find the milkweed plant, they're thinking the same thing, and they don't know that there's another plant there. Caterpillars are hardy. They'll go around until they find a new milkweed plant, but the, design by nature in milkweed is to colonize and have many in an area across the landscape, hence their amazing parachuting seed, design. So one milkweed plant, if you do have a caterpillar that shows up in your yard and it's doing its thing, you could always go and look for additional leaves and put them around the base of your plant. But they're pretty ingenious. They'll figure it out as well. That's it's tough, right? It's tough, and only 1 in 500 makes it to an adult butterfly.
Wow.
For all those reasons that I had mentioned too.
Right.
The odds are stacked. When you see a butterfly, that's a tough butterfly for sure.
Yeah. Somebody was asking, are there safer soaps for plants? Like, is there?
I'm sure there are. I don't have anything off the top of my head that I can recommend. But do your homework as gardeners for sure. You can always read about products before you purchase them. And of course, because there's so many great gardeners in the network of Windsor Essex on Facebook, you could always maybe post and say, hey, I'm thinking about purchasing this. Have you used it? Do your homework first before you commit to it, just so that, you make the most informed decision on what you're doing in your gardens.
Excellent. And just another question here, which month should we see the eggs? When do they?
So as soon as we start seeing monarchs arrive on their migration, I would say within the next couple of weeks after that, you could see eggs. So if you have milkweed in your garden and it's very small and it's just popping out of the ground, I would say within the month of that, every day you water, you could just keep an eye under the leaves. Or if you go for a walk and you come across like a patch of milkweed, the most common thing you could do is just check under the leaves to see if there's eggs there. So yeah, I feel like last year it was later, maybe in June, I started noticing them, but every week leading up to that, I was looking.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. So we're looking a little bit later going into the summer months.
Yeah. When it's a little, yeah.
Okay. Don't currently see any other questions. I do see somebody saying that having milkweed helped us sell our house. So
That was me, Monique.
okay.
Yeah, we actually started off, we ended up having one milkweed that showed up unannounced, and then we decided to try propagating it. And when we sold our house coming up to 3 years ago, our realtor put in the ad that we had a butterfly nursery in the back. So
Wow.
we were quite pleased about that. And
Attracted people.
yeah.
Very good.
Cool.
Okay. Is there any other questions for our presenter here?
And if something comes to mind as you go throughout your season and you have questions for me, whether it's about monarchs or anything else that IRCA's programs are offering for the stewardship of spring stewardship, please reach out. I'm around, and I should mention too, we have quite a few projects coming up. They're all listed on our website. We have our Earth Day tree planting. We have some tree plantings in the Sandwich community, and in Southeast Leamington, we're doing a large restoration project at one of our new restoration sites. And there's new projects coming up all the time. And so, if you're curious, you want to come out and plant some trees and do some stewardship with us, reach out to me, and we'd be happy to have you there for sure.
Gina, do we have your email or the site? I was going to see if Mary Ellen could post it like she has been posting the other ones.
I'll put it in the chat right now.
Okay, perfect.
I'll put the link to our event page, and then you can check it out. And then I'll put my email. So if you have questions for me,
okay,
reach out anytime.
Great. Okay, so I am going to turn this back to Deborah so that we can close out our session.
Okay, you know what? Thank you very much, everybody, for coming out, and our speakers, Gina and Brandy. Now we do have the Weeby House straw to do. So I am going to call upon Cassandra because she has rigged up some kind of system to do the Weeby House straw.
Thanks, Deborah.
And yes.
Yeah, so it's just a little tool. I'll share my screen. So it does like a little circle with the names. So it's random.
Cool.
Give me a moment. Here we go. All right, can everyone see my screen?
Yep.
All right, so we are drawing for Weeby House. And the first winner is Joan Donaldson. So I will keep track of this, and an email will go to you guys, okay? All right, so we're gonna do another one. And the winner is Sherry Cunningham. And the third winner is Dana Acknowledgement. Sorry about if I said it wrong. And we have one more, right, Deborah?
We do.
Okay. And the last winner is Therese. Yeah, Therese.
Yes.
All right, congratulations, everybody. And we will send you an email shortly. And I will unshare my screen. Actually, how do I? Oh, there we go. Thank you.
Perfect. Thank you so much, Cassandra. I'm so glad that you were organizing that part of it. It might have been just a little bit too high tech for me. Anyways, congratulations to our 4 winners, Joan, Dana, Sherry, and Therese. And we'll get in contact you with your emails that you registered with. Anyways, it's just about that time. We're going to finish just a couple minutes early, it looks like. And I so appreciate you guys all coming out, putting up with a few of our little technical issues that we did have along the way. We're fairly new to this. We're Rotarians. And, you know, gardener wannabes. So high-tech stuff is, well, for some of us at any rate, a little bit beyond me at any rate. So thank you for the speakers for coming out. Thank you for the team for helping out with this, our inaugural environmental event. And hopefully we'll have more. We'll post some information about how to contact us in terms of projects, as some of the people have indicated they'd be interested in joining us for especially Operation Pollination. And if there's no more further questions, concerns, or queries, I'd like to say thank you very much for coming. Appreciate it. Thanks, guys.
Thanks, Deb, for organizing.
Thank you, Deb. And have a good day.
Great effort, Deb.
Thank you.
And team.
It was very informative.
Congrats, team.
Great work. It was great information. Thank you.
Thank you, Mary Lou.
Welcome.